If nicotine is so addictive, then why isn't everyone hooked on nicotine gum? Why are today's teenagers who are sucking down vapes, who are packing in Zimbabwe's, way more addicted than guys who are puffing Marlboros back in the 70s? The kids these days, they got a whole bunch of problems going on in the background. Even beyond these new products. The vapes, the Zins, the fruity pouches. It's not just for flavor, it's not just for fun, but because it's the only thing that's keeping their brains barely functional in a world that's frying their dopamine. We're talking TikTok, doom scrolling, burning out your reward system, blue light nuking your sleep schedule, ultra processed foods running down your energy levels, and EMFs triggering stress without you even noticing that it's happening or what to do to mitigate it. And in this new world, nicotine isn't just a drug anymore. It's a coping mechanism, a survival strategy, a fake solution to a lifestyle that no longer supports focus, calm, or control. And that is the trap. And today, I'm gonna walk you through what nicotine actually is, what it does to your brain, how it's actually a miracle drug, why it feels like a solution when your life is off track, and why it's so dangerous, but also, if you choose, how to use it wisely. Or even better, beating the addiction altogether by rebuilding what nicotine pretends to give you. Because here's the truth, nicotine isn't actually the villain. It just fills in for everything you're not getting from your diet, your sleep, your habits, and your environment. And stay with me here, because we are about to uncover the most misunderstood molecule on the planet and how to take your brain back. So let's zoom out here for a second. Most people think that nicotine is just a bad drug from cigarettes. But what if I told you it's actually found in your food? Tomatoes, eggplants, potatoes, even green peppers. They all contain a tiny amount of nicotine. But here's the scale. To get the same amount of nicotine that you would get from a single cigarette, you'd have to eat around 20 pounds of eggplant. The amount of nicotine in food is about 1/100th to 1/1000th of the amount in a cigarette. So yes, it is natural, but in food, it's just a little whisper. And then in a pouch or vape, it becomes a megaphone. And why does this matter? Because your body doesn't just tolerate nicotine, but it actually has built-in receptors for it. This means that your biology is already wired to respond to something like nicotine. But what it's really responding to is a brain chemical called acetylcholine. So what is acetylcholine? It's one of the most basic and essential neurotransmitters in your entire body. Let's break this down though, because neurotransmitters are basically just chemical messengers. They carry signals from one nerve cell to the next. They are how your brain and your body talk to one another. And acetylcholine, it is one of the very first ones ever discovered. It controls your focus, your learning, your short-term memory, as well as your muscle contractors and even your heartbeat. You can't move, think, or even breathe properly without acetylcholine. Think of it like your brain's green light switch. It tells your systems, let's go, let's lock in, let's fire. Now, here is where nicotine enters the story. Nicotine mimics acetylcholine. It plugs into the same receptors called the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. And when that happens, it sends a strong signal to your brain. And your brain responds with sharper focus, increased alertness, and even faster reaction time. And that is why nicotine feels powerful. It's tapping directly into your core wiring. But here's the problem. When you use it in excess, too much, too often, those receptors start tuning out. And you end up needing more nicotine just to feel the same. And why is that? It's because nicotine does not behave like acetylcholine. You see, your natural acetylcholine is like a quick messenger. It binds to the receptor, sends the signal, and gets cleared out within seconds. It's just like tapping a key on a keyboard. But nicotine, it sticks. It's like a sticky, dirty keyboard. So it latches on and holds on to that receptor way longer than acetylcholine ever would. And this overstimulates the system. The receptors, they start to shut down. Some receptors get deleted off the cells. Others become less sensitive. It's like someone pouring honey and wood glue on your keyboard while you're typing an email at work. Some keys get stuck down, repeating the same letter over and over and over and over until you wait for that key to unstick itself. In the same way, your brain's response to nicotine or even natural acetylcholine can become dulled. You've fried the very switches that control your focus, your calmness, and your clarity. And that, my friend, is the trap. The same system that makes nicotine effective is the one that leads to tolerance and dependency. But don't worry, I'm going to explain how you can get the exact right dosage so that you can get all the benefits without the harm that almost everyone gets with nicotine. Because believe it or not, nicotine working in this way makes it somewhat of a miracle drug when used properly and strategically. And we will get to that soon. But let's continue to talk about why nicotine feels so good at first. So let's get real instead of falling under either extreme side of this argument, so we can actually see the nuance on this topic. Look, man, people don't use nicotine in cigarettes because they just want to get lung cancer. They use it because at first it works. So you pop in a Zyn or chew some gum or take a puff from a vape, and suddenly you feel more dialed in, you can focus for longer, you're not as anxious, and you feel sharper, lighter, and more productive. And why is that? It's because nicotine is activating your body's built-in attention system. It's plugging into those acetylcholine receptors and cranking up the signal. But it doesn't stop there. Nicotine also triggers the release of dopamine, the chemical that your brain uses to feel drive, pleasure, motivation, and reward to keep you driven to continue. And on top of that, it lightly boosts serotonin and norepinephrine, so you feel more balanced and alert at the same time. And it is a real benefit, a cheat code almost. And when you're sleep deprived, overstimulated, low energy, or chronically distracted, nicotine feels like a lifeline. But here's the thing that most people don't realize. That boost, it's borrowed. It's pulling from the very systems that are supposed to keep you grounded naturally. And the more you use nicotine to shortcut that process, the more your brain forgets how to do it on its own. That's why the same people who use it to feel calm or focused end up needing it just to feel normal. And that is where the next trap begins. So stick with me here, because what we're about to unpack next just may explain why this generation of kids is more addicted than any other generation. But what if I told you that on its own, nicotine isn't as addictive as people think? It's only addictive when it comes to one basic thing. And this one thing is something that the young kids struggle with now more than ever. So what is the one thing that makes nicotine truly addictive? That is dysregulation. When your brain's baseline is already off. When your dopamine is low, your sleep is broken, your stress is high, your diet is completely trash. That is when nicotine feels like a solution, because chemically it is a short-term solution. Let's take a step back here and look at the modern world we're living in. A short-term solution like the crash course keto or carnivore or vegan diets. Your phone, your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth headphones, they are constantly hitting your nervous system. This raises calcium inside your brain cells, and it creates oxidative stress and makes your brain feel more inflamed and less stable. EMFs and brain inflammation or radiation is a real consideration that we deal with today at an unprecedented rate, way more so than people in the 70s tuning into an AM/FM radio. These days, we can airdrop or send gigabytes of 4K video from smartphone to smartphone invisibly through the air. And in the same way, now more than ever, we are dealing with intense sleep disruption, because most people, especially teens, aren't sleeping deeply. Blue light from screens is causing melatonin disruption. There's TikTok doom scrolling until 2 a.m., which means no early sleep phase deep sleep and lower amounts of REM sleep. And no REM means no memory consolidation, no dopamine replenishment, and no emotional reset. So they wake up already at a loss. But aside from just the sleep disruption, what does dopamine doom scrolling actually do to our minds? Well, to put it simply, short form content like TikTok and Reels spike dopamine non-stop. It's about the novelty, fast cuts, instant hits, and over time, your reward system flattens. You stop feeling excited by anything real, and I've been here before. I notice this feeling if I sit and scroll and watch something, getting that little drop of dopamine. I notice that I don't want to do things as much. I'll be lethargic, I'll sit on the couch, And instead of doing something productive, even if it's easy, it just feels like a lot of work, and I just don't feel the drive to actually get it done. And this is dangerous over time. Our brains are not meant to be like this. They've literally been hijacked. So if you feel like this, you should be angry. I know I get angry when this situation arises for me. But this isn't just about social media. It could be like someone eating an entire bag of candy and then trying an assorted fresh fruit tray and complaining that it tastes too sour. And that brings me to the final point of what we deal with at an unprecedented rate these days: processed food and gut inflammation. That means unstable fats, cheap vegetable oils, processed sugar, low nutrient containing food products. This destroys gut health, which is directly linked to neurotransmitter balance. So low energy, poor focus, and mood swings then follow. So now you've got a brain that's inflamed, sleep deprived, understimulated, and undernourished. And then you give it a Zyn, a 3 milligram pouch of nicotine that boosts dopamine, mimics acetylcholine, and makes you feel alive for a second. And then boom, it sticks because it's solving a real problem, even if just temporarily. But instead of fixing the real problems, your brain just rewires around this crutch. Now let's touch on what exactly has fueled the Zyn and vape epidemic in society. But first, let me give you a real world frame. Zyn isn't small anymore. It's massive. In just the first 3 months of 2025, big tobacco company Philip Morris sold 223 million cans of Zyn in the US alone. That should be enough to piss you off right there. And they're up 50% year over year, now holding over 70% of the nicotine pouch market. That means that practically everyone who sees one of these cans thinks that it's just harmless, a clean swap for cigarettes. But that cannot be further from the truth. And I've seen Gen Z kids using these at the gym, and they end up spitting it out in the urinals and in the bathrooms. So if you're ever wondering what those rectangular little pillows that are littering our streets are, they're probably Zyns. But aside from that, let's break down why delivery method matters almost more than the actual molecule itself. Cigarettes give it that combustion, the smoke, the fast brain hit. It has this harshness to it, the throat hit, the ritual. That is what locks in the behavior. And it has a super high addiction potential because of how fast and sensory rich the experience is. And then there's the Zyn pouches, or the Zimbabwe's, the kids call them, for fast oral absorption, fruity flavors, even pyrazines added to intensify brain reward. They're discreet, they're convenient, they feel clean, but the delivery is fast enough to wire a habit before you even notice. And then there's vapes, the fastest of them all. Inhale, exhale, instant nicotine to the brain, paired with visual vapor and flavored sensation. This is dopamine on demand, engineered for addiction. And then there's the nicotine gum, slow, steady oral absorption. No ritual, no pyrazines, no crazy flavor feedback loop. Because there is no spike, it is less likely to create dependency. And then there's the nicotine patches, the slowest and most stable delivery system. It's worn on the skin and releases nicotine passively over hours. No ritual, no taste, no quick brain hit, and it's even used in therapy settings to manage withdrawal, not to stimulate performance or pleasure. And here's the real bottom line. It's not just about how much nicotine you get, it's how fast it hits and how satisfying that everything comes with it feels. That is why a 3 milligram Zyn pouch can be dramatically more addictive than a 2 milligram piece of nicotine gum, even though the dose is almost the same. Even flavor plays a major role too. Sweet, fruity, and candy-like flavors don't just taste better, but they spike your brain's sensory reward system more. The more delicious and stimulating that it feels, the more your brain ties pleasure to the behavior. Unflavored or mint gum doesn't have the same grip on your dopamine, but throw in mango, citrus, or berry, and now you've got a mini dessert linked to your nicotine hit. That's a stronger memory loop, a stronger craving, and a faster path of habit formation. But here is the real nail in the coffin that causes these nicotine delivering habits to become truly addictive, just like people think and expect from nicotine. And that is secret chemicals that are usually added off-label, like the one I mentioned earlier, pyrazines. Probably never heard of it before. These aren't just flavoring agents, they're neurological amplifiers. Pyrazines are added to cigarettes, Zins, and many nicotine products to try and smooth the harshness of the nicotine, to deepen the sensory impact, and to lock the experience into your memory. This stuff is honestly messed up, man. They don't get you high, they make the high stick. And yes, of course, tobacco companies have been using pyrazines since the 1960s. Originally added to cigarettes to improve flavor and increase smoke smoothness. And they were quickly found to enhance the ritualistic and repeatable nature of smoking. They made each puff more pleasurable and more memorable. Fast forward to today, and they've evolved. Now they're found in Zin pouches, vapes, and even some nicotine lozenges. But you won't see these pyrazines listed on the label. Instead, they're hidden under vague names like flavoring, natural and artificial flavors, aroma compounds, or tucked away secretly into proprietary blends. They can show up in specific names like acetylpyrazine, ethylpyrazine, and 2,5-dimethylpyrazine. But you'll rarely know because there's no requirement to disclose them individually. Imagine nicotine as the signal and pyrazines as the glue that anchors it to your nervous system. They enhance the ritual, the taste, and the emotional feeling around it. And here's what most people don't know. They also act as conditioners, meaning they teach your brain to crave the behavior again. This is why nicotine gum does not get people hooked like a Zin does. Those sneaky rat bastards. It's not just about flavor or dose here. It's the engineered reinforcement from compounds like pyrazine that turn a little pouch into a fully loaded habit trap. And now that cigarettes and vapes are banned and looked down upon in public places, that convenience, that discreet little pouch that nobody can see or smell or judge makes Zin even more dangerous. Because now you can hide the addiction while the brain chemistry keeps rewiring in the background. It's chemical engineering at the behavioral level. Now, there is one more thing we have to talk about when it comes to Zins and vapes. And it's not just the nicotine here, it's what's carrying the nicotine. You see, unlike cigarettes that burn tobacco, Zins and vapes use highly engineered delivery systems. And many of them are made with synthetic polymers and plastic-based materials, especially the oral pouches. Now this one hits really near and dear to me. You'll find out in just a second why. When you place a pouch under your lip, sometimes for hours a day, it's sitting under one of the most absorbent, permeable areas of your entire body, your gum tissue and your mucous membrane. Now here's the problem. Under stress, heat, or prolonged contact, those plastics and polymers can begin to shed microplastic particles. You heard it right. They got the friggin' microplastics in there. We're talking microplastics, nanoplastics that enter directly into your bloodstream, right through the soft tissue in your mouth. And these particles definitely do not just pass through. Studies shown that they can trigger immune reactions, disrupt hormone balance, and lodge themselves in tissues for months or even longer. And unlike your gut, where the microbiome might offer some protection, there is no filter here. These plastics have direct access to your blood and your brain. On top of that, some of these pouches are laced with flavor enhancers, preservatives, sweeteners, and other unlisted additives, especially when the ingredients are listed as proprietary. So you're not just getting a hit of nicotine, you're getting a chemical cocktail absorbed straight into your nervous system every time you pop a pouch. And that is why oral delivery might feel safer than smoking. But long term, it could still carry risks that we are only beginning to understand. So we know that Zin, cigarettes, and vaping are the worst and most addictive ways to get nicotine. But it is not all bad, because here is where it really gets strange. Did you know that nicotine has actually been studied as a treatment for certain diseases? Not just tolerated, but tested for its therapeutic potential. Let's start with Parkinson's disease. Multiple studies show that nicotine can improve motor systems and even delay onset. And why is that? Because it protects dopaminergic neurons, the same ones that are dying off in Parkinson's. Now, what about Alzheimer's? Well, we know that nicotine stimulates acetylcholine receptors, which boosts memory and attention. Some researchers have explored low-dose nicotine to support cognitive function in early Alzheimer's cases. Even schizophrenia, where patients have a high rate of smoking, many believe that it's not just a habit. It's a form of self-medication. because nicotine helps regulate sensory processing and reduces some negative symptoms. And now here's the kicker. HIV, influenza, and even rabies have been shown in some experimental studies to interact with acetylcholine receptors. This has led scientists to wonder if nicotine, by occupying these same receptors, might block viral entry or reduce inflammation. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, early French studies suggested that smokers had a surprisingly lower hospitalization rate. And later, they found that nicotine might inhibit the virus's ability to bind to ACE2 receptors, or modulate the immune system's overreaction. Now, to be clear, I am not saying that nicotine is a cure, but it opens up a new perspective. This molecule isn't just recreational, it's interacting with systems deep inside the nervous system, immune system, and brain chemistry. And when used properly, that interaction might be more helpful than harmful. We'll dive deeper into that idea, and I will give you exact protocols to follow to feel your best no matter what you're going through later on. But first, there is one more thing you should know about nicotine. It doesn't just boost your brain. It might actually help block viruses from hijacking your system. Let me explain here. Some of the worst viruses, including SARS-CoV-2 and influenza viruses, they mess with your body using those ACE2 receptors I just mentioned. Think of these ACE2 receptors like a door on your cells. When that door is open, viruses can sneak in, take over the machinery, and start causing inflammation and chaos. But here is where it gets interesting. Nicotine can act like a bouncer standing in front of this door. It binds to nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, which actually regulates those ACE2 doorways. And when it's in the right spot, that door is not going to open up, meaning viruses can't invade as easily. That is why earlier studies found that nicotine users were underrepresented in hospital data during the early pandemic waves of COVID. Now, do not twist it here. I am not saying that Zyn protects you from COVID, but I am saying that nicotine modulates immune response. It may reduce excessive cytokine storms, those dangerous overreactions, and it may block certain viruses from entering your cells in the first place. Pretty wild for something that most people think is just a drug that's been weaponized. But here is the big reminder. You know what else blocks viruses in the same way? Getting deep sleep, reducing chronic stress, eating whole, nutritious, anti-inflammatory foods, walking, sweating, training, breathing deeply, and loving relationships and healthy gut bacteria. So yes, nicotine has the capacity to close the gap and help a little, but it'll never outperform the basics needed for human vitality. And the goal here is not to find loopholes. It's to build a system so strong that you don't need crutches. So you may be wondering, okay, JMO, so if nicotine can be used as a tool, but long-term use has downsides, where exactly is the line? Like, draw it out for me. And that's a great question. Let's break it down here. First, we must understand how addictions become formed. And the first topic here is frequency over the dose. You see, chronic use is less about how much nicotine you use at once, but more about how often you're using it. If you're hitting nicotine every single day, especially multiple times a day, that is when tolerance ramps up. And that is when receptor sensitivity drops. So you must realize that using every day or multiple times a day is not a good solution. You're setting yourself up to fail. Next is the withdrawal signals. If you notice you feel foggy, cranky, or low energy without it, that is your sign, especially if the dosage is too high when you have it. This is showing that the dosage that you took is creating a dependency pattern. Next, let's talk about time of day, because circadian timing matters. Nicotine late at night, big mistake. It will crush REM sleep, delay your melatonin, and cause you to wake up constantly throughout the night. And that sets up a vicious cycle of fatigue the next day, which makes you want to reach for even more nicotine. Congratulations, you played yourself. So just like caffeine, don't do it past 3 p.m. for best results. And lastly, remember that the delivery method repeats the loop. Fast hits like vapes and Zyn, especially the fruity flavors, train your brain to seek dopamine hits more frequently, even if your nicotine total is low. This rapid reward loop is what conditions the dependency. Here is a rough Coach JMO rule of thumb. If you're using nicotine more than 3 times per week, especially in the absence of deep sleep, a clean diet, and solid stress regulation, you are on the edge of chronic use. But don't worry, because in the next section, we're gonna flip the script right on its head. I'm gonna show you the exact formula to make it so that you would never need to use nicotine again. All right, now that we've talked about the risks of relying on nicotine, let's flip it. Let's talk about how you can earn everything that nicotine gives you without using nicotine at all. Because remember, nicotine isn't the ultimate thing here. Nicotine does not create anything new. It just borrows from a system that already exists inside you, your acetylcholine system. And that system, that is your secret weapon. Acetylcholine is the OG focus molecule. It controls memory, muscle sharpness, alertness, muscle contraction, and even creativity. And unlike nicotine, you don't need a Zyn to boost it. You just need to know how to turn the system on. And let me show you how. The first one is vagus nerve activation. The vagus nerve is like the remote control to your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode. Stimulating it boosts acetylcholine and reduces inflammation. And how do you do it? You can do deep belly breathing, you can do cold exposure, you can do it from gargling, humming, or even chanting. You can do it by slowly chewing your meals, and you can even do it with safe social interaction. These are simple but powerful. This is nervous system training 101. The next one is choline-rich nutrition. Acetylcholine is made from choline. And if you don't get enough, you can't make it. And the best food sources of choline are egg yolks, grass-fed liver, salmon, beef, and even cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. Throw in some omega-3s and now your neurons are primed to fire. You can also stimulate it with learning and novelty. Do you want your brain to make more acetylcholine? Force it to adapt. That means learning a new language, playing a new instrument, solving problems, puzzles, logic games, and social conversations that require listening and responding. This kind of brain exercise builds the muscles of acetylcholine. And then next up, of course, sleep and circadian rhythm. Because REM sleep is essential for acetylcholine replenishment. That is when your brain consolidates memory and rebuilds neurochemicals. No deep sleep means no sharpness the next day. So protect your sleep like your life depends on it, because in the long term, it does. Next up, we got one of my favorites, physical movement. Movement, especially coordination heavy movement like dancing, martial arts, or resistance training, lights up the acetylcholine circuits. This is motor learning in action. And then there's supportive nootropics and natural boosters, because you can also enhance acetylcholine with targeted compounds. You can use alpha-GPC or acetylcholine, which are direct choline donors that help build acetylcholine. And then there's acetylcarnitine, or ALCAR, which supports mitochondrial function and cholinergic transmissions. There's huperzine A, an herb that slows acetylcholine breakdown. However, this one is best to use sparingly. There's Bacopa monnieri, which improves learning and memory via cholinergic support. And there's lion's mane mushroom. This boosts nerve growth and brain repair. Stacked correctly, these help your brain feel awake, sharp, and alert without the crash. So what's the takeaway here? If you build these 5 habits, you'll start to feel like you're on nicotine without ever even touching the stuff. More focus, more drive, more clarity, and it's real, it's coming from you. So stick around, because in the next section, we're gonna talk about how to use nicotine ethically for short-term benefits as you build up your lifestyle, your diet, and acetylcholine foundation for a good life. This is where you can start your journey right away. Build a lifestyle, feel good for taking action, but do it for long-term freedom and vitality. Now, let's say you've done all the foundational work. You've earned your acetylcholine, but you still want to experiment with nicotine. Not for stimulation, not for stress relief, but for performance. Then we've got to talk about ethical use, because nicotine can be used safely, but only if you're smart about these 3 things. 1 is dosage. The goal is not to feel a buzz. It's to gently tap into that alert, focused state. For most people, that means no more than 0.5 milligrams to 1 milligram per session. Anything more and you risk tolerance and the crash. 2 is frequency. Once or twice a week. Timed with deep work, creative sessions, public speaking, or workouts. This keeps your brain sensitive to the effect. Number 3 is the delivery method. Nicotine gum and dermal patches are your best bet. They provide steady, slow delivery without spiking your dopamine. And then the Zyn, the vapes, the lozenges, the cigarettes, those are your worst offenders. They hit fast, hard, and with extra additives like the pyrazines, which are training your brain for fast dopamine loops. Here's a real-world example. Coach Andre has been experimenting with using half a piece of nicotine gum right around noon. when his mental workload and physical output are at their peak. And he's noticed a subtle edge in things like focus during creativity sprints, verbal fluency in meetings, and even intensity in the gym. And not because he needs it, I mean, look at the guy, but because he's already built the foundation with diet, lifestyle, and training. This just enhances it in a small snapshot of time. And here's the key point. Microdosing can be okay in the context of a solid long-term game plan. It does have some utility and even health benefits, but it should be one where your lifestyle is dialed in. Your sleep is clean, your gut is healthy. Everyone has some work to do in some ways, but it's about doing that work and not overcompensating. That way your receptors aren't burned out and you're dodging the synthetic flavors, the chemical reinforcers, and the pyrazines that hijack your system. And the bottom line here is that you're going to use it to amplify and build with your healthy lifestyle, not to escape from it. And that leads us to the final message. The most important part of this entire video. Let's finish strong. Now, brother, here's the truth that most extreme health gurus or addicted people will not tell you. Nicotine is not good or bad. It's neutral. It's a molecule with powerful effects. Effects that can either boost you or trap you. The difference isn't about the drug. It's in the why, in the delivery, and the purpose. If you're using nicotine to feel more alive, then it's not really about the nicotine at all, is it? It's about escape. And escape is always a temporary fix for a deeper problem. So let's zoom out here. Let's talk about the world today, especially for younger men. We've got higher nicotine dosages, more chemical additives, flavors engineered to be addictive, and delivery systems that are discreet, convenient, and hit fast. And it's all layered onto a generation raised in a world of instant gratification. You don't have to work for satisfaction anymore. It's one click, one scroll, one puff, one zin. But here's the real crisis. Most young men haven't built anything of value yet. No strong identity, no legacy, no earned reputation, and no deep reserves of confidence that only come from struggle. So when you combine a nervous system wired for novelty, no grit to push through discomfort, and an overstimulated world of hollow dopamine spikes, you get a wildfire. A dopamine wildfire burning across the brains of an entire generation, leaving emptiness behind. And nicotine, it feels like the answer because biologically, it works. It makes your brain feel okay, even when your life is totally out of alignment. And that is the trap. So here is your mission. Earn your chemistry. Build the lifestyle that makes you sharp, clear, focused, and powerful without needing the crutch. And then, and only then, if you want to enhance, you can, but it comes from a place of ownership because you're not running from anything. You're showing up for everything. You're in the driver's seat now. Let's go. And if you want me to send a final daily checklist to remind you of everything you can do to boost acetylcholine naturally, plus the exact nicotine microdosing protocol that I recommend, just comment boost down below and I will send it your way. This isn't about quitting cold turkey with no lifestyle foundations or judging the habit. It's about mastering your biology and staying sharp for life. JMO out.